Hello, everyone. As I promised, I was going to start doing story time. So I'm going to actually finally introduce you all to my former best friend. We're going to call her Hot Pocket. So let me tell you how this particular story time came about. So one of my friends and I were talking about candles recently. And I said, me growing up, we never had candles in our house. If you're from the Caribbean, you already know, like candles, incense, any of that kind of stuff in a Caribbean household is not allowed. Period. People feel like you're conjuring up the spirits and you're bringing the spirits into your home. So that was a no in our home. But my best friend, her mom was literally uh the equivalent of, what's her name? She recently passed away. She was like a black homemaker, very uh famous. She recently passed away. She recently passed away of Alzheimer's. I can't think of her name right now. But anyways, her mom was like the equivalent of that. Her mom was like the best homemaker. And she would have her home always smelled so luxurious. She always smelled luxurious. She always, was made up from head to toe. She was one of those like very classy women. But her mom also had been married a lot of times. And just recently, I found out that her mom is now getting married to husband number 7. So I was talking to a friend because we were all friends growing up in the same neighborhood. We all knew each other. And that's how it came about. And we literally went from candles to talking about our old friend. And I was just like, you know what? To this day, I keep a bougie candle in my house because of that woman. And I was like, and it's so funny because my mom, my my mom, no one in my family did candles or anything like that back then, when we were growing up. Now, of course, they do candles and stuff like that because they know like that's silly. Like, when you grow up, you know better, you do better. So so I actually lit a candle. This is one of my favorite brands. I actually lit a candle for this occasion, honey, so we can get into it. And I turned off the lights, lit the candle, so we can talk about some things. And then, like I said, she always smelled really nice. She only wore 2 brands of perfumes though. She only wore like a Calvin Klein perfume or a Estee Lauder perfume. Those were the only 2 brand perfumes that she wore. Now, my mom, on the other hand, she was like a perfume connoisseur. Like, my mom had everything. Even back then, my mom was wearing Bond, Bond number 9. Back then, in the 90s, my mom was wearing Bond number 9. But my friend Hot Pocket, her mom, uh, she loved Calvin Klein perfumes and she also loved Estee Lauder perfumes. So recently I was clearing out my juice rack. If you know what a juice rack is, if you're a perfume head, you know what a juice rack is. One of my very many juice racks. And it's one of the ones where I have like mid-level fragrances, fragrances that aren't expensive, but they smell really well. And lo and behold, I came across this bottle of perfume. It's called Beauty by Calvin Klein. And it was actually in a gift set that she gave me several years ago. And it was a Calvin Klein gift set. And her thing was, you got to find one out of here that you like so that that could be your signature Calvin Klein perfume. And this was the one that I liked, and it was Beauty. And I said, you know what? I need to come on here and tell the people about Hot Pocket. Now you all will know why I and our other friend call her Hot Pocket. But this is going to be the introduction to Hot Pocket. And this will more than likely be a 7-part series because things go deep with Hot Pocket. I mean, seriously deep. Deep with Hot Pocket. So yes, good morning, Master T. Yes, thank you so much for coming on. You too, you have a good day as well. Okay, so when my family came to the States, we moved to Florida. And my parents only believed in the highest level of education. If you come from a Caribbean or African background, you already understand why. It was just it was just a staple. Highest of education, you're going to bring home the best grades. You're going to only be around the more affluent children that are of color, etc. So I went to private school. I'm not one of those girls who went to public school. No, I went to private school. Literally my entire time in grade school, I went to private school. I went to public school 2 years, and it was a culture shock. And I begged my parents to put me back into private school, and they did. So, anyways, I was an overachiever as a child. Still, I feel like as an adult, I've kind of calmed down some. I want to get that mojo back, that overachiever attitude back because it helps you, especially if you're an entrepreneur. But when I was a child, my parents had me in like all of these different academia programs and etc. So I actually started first grade at 4 years old. I was not supposed to, but the only school that would allow me to start first grade at 4 years old was a private school. And I attended that private school and did very well at that private school. And then there was this other young girl who was actually in the second grade. And she was 6 years old in the second grade, which was still fairly young. And again, we're at a very affluent private school. There's not very many Black people. And out of the entire school, I want to say it might have been, and we're talking about thousands of kids because this school went from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. It may have been 40 Black kids at the entire school. And this particular school back then was hundreds of dollars a month to go to school there. I was just talking to my mom last year about the school. I mentioned the school and I was like, well, how much was tuition? And she told me, and I was like, I was in shock, because this was back in the day. I can't believe you was paying that much. But, of course, your parents want you to go to the best. They want you to have the things that they did not have. My parents were not fortunate enough to go to private school and have the best of education. But with the education that they did have, they did the best with that and went on to, graduate and go to graduate school and doctoral school and all of that. But that's a whole nother subject. But they wanted the best for me. So I went to private school. There were 4 girls and we were very close friends. The other 2 girls, I will bring them up and I'll probably give them a name in another story time. But this particular story time, I'm just going to talk about Hot Pocket. And it's funny because the other 2 girls that I met in private school, we to this day still communicate with each other. Our parents still are, communicating with each other when they see them. It's nothing but love and hugs. So it just goes to show you can really make, lifelong friends in school. So I met Hot Pocket. She was in the second grade. I was in the first grade. And we automatically clicked with each other because we were introverts. And then we were like the youngest people in our class. Like we're very young. So, when it came down to recess, back then we called it recess. I don't know what they call it now. But when we would go to recess, our classes went to recess together. And how recess would work was you would have your time frame to go to recess with your class. So, anyways, just to let you know, I had been knowing Hot Pocket ever since first grade. I had known this girl, and instantly I was like enthralled by her. I was like, oh my gosh, it's a brown girl. She looks like me. She comes from a Caribbean background. Because we were talking and we met each other at recess, and then uh I ended up switching classes because my particular teacher ended up getting pregnant, and then she was out on maternity leave. So instead of them hiring another teacher, or maybe they were trying to find another teacher, they split our class up. So then when they split the class up and I went to another teacher's class, my class had lunch with her class. So I was like, it's a match made in heaven. We're gonna be friends forever. So, anyways, she and I quickly became the best of friends. I mean, the best of friends. Uh, you know, I know now people are really big into these big elaborate birthday parties and all that kind of stuff. Back then, if you had your birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese, or if you had your birthday party at McDonald's, you were doing the thing, honey. Like that was the thing, to have your birthday party there. So I remember I had a birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese one year, and she had her birthday party at McDonald's that year. And our parents ended up meeting. Well, not our parents, but our moms ended up meeting because our fathers were providers, honey. They was working. They was just go pay for the party. They wasn't go be there. We was go cut a cake and all that kind of stuff at home. But our parents ended up meeting. And so our moms kind of had like that same je ne sais quoi, that same, I wouldn't say Dominique Devereaux. I would say Dominique Devereaux. Yeah, had like that, of course, we wasn't eating caviar and drinking burnt champagne or whatever. None of that. But had that very classy, very dignified, uh, energy. So they kind of clicked with each other. And this was, again, I was in the first grade, she was in the second. So at the time, it was just Hot Pocket. That was her only child at the time. And she was married to Hot Pocket's dad. So, they ended up doing, what is it called? Tennis and golf. They both played tennis and golf, and these are black women coming up 80s, late 80s, early 90s. No, that was 90s. I'm sorry, that was 90s. And so it was just like, oh wow, okay. Our moms get along, we get along, okay, things are going smooth. So I would say around like the 5th grade. So I was in the 5th grade, she was in the 6th grade. She left the school. She left the school. No, I apologize. It was her and her brother. It was her and her brother, and and she was married to her brother's dad. She had actually divorced Hot Pocket's dad, and she was married to her brother's dad. So yeah, she was divorced. She was, remarried or whatever. So I apologize because I was just thinking about it. I was like, me and her brother are the same age. So it just hit me. Me and her brother are the same age. I totally forgot about that. So she was on her second husband at this point. And her and my mom jailed together. They were cool, this, that, and the other. But around like the 5th grade, she left the school. And so we kind of disconnected from each other because, back then you couldn't be on the phone, talking on the phone. You know how kids now, like fifth grade, they had their own cell phone. And then a lot of girls would have like their own line in their room, and I would beg my parents for my own telephone line, and that was not happening. And honey, listen, anytime I was on the phone, my mom was sitting right there listening to the entire conversation. So listen, if I couldn't talk to you in school, I wasn't going to be able to talk to you on the phone, because I had a helicopter mom in a nosy behind mom. To this day, I can't have no conversation in front of her because she will be all up in the conversation. Anyways, we ended up losing contact with each other. So literally, we were the best of friends for these years, coming up, and then we lost contact with each other. And I had heard that she had gotten a divorce, that her mom had gotten a divorce and had remarried someone else, and so they moved, and the new husband, at this point in time, there were two kids, but the mom had gotten pregnant. And so then there were going to be 3 kids in private school, and I guess he was just like, they're not going to go to private school anymore, so she ended up going to public school. And we lost contact with each other because it wasn't like we did play dates and all that kind of stuff like kids do now. We didn't do that back then. Like, let's be real. Y'all know that. So, anyways, we are we're friends, but we just don't talk to each other anymore. So, fast forward, we're in high school, and we're in this program for academia, of, like I said, parents always want to make sure that I was in the best of programs when it comes to academics. And so we were both in this program, which was like an accelerated type program for school. So you were in high school, but you were also in college at the same time. And so when I was at the community college doing my hours for my associate's degree at the same time while I was in high school, I saw Hot Pocket. And my heart was just fluttering because I knew that was her. You know what I mean? Even though it literally had been like 5-6 years since I saw her last, I knew that was her. And at that time, I was in the 11th grade. And at that time, she was a senior. So I literally, when I walk in, I see her, but I know she probably didn't notice it was me because I look really different. I had like a ugly duckling phase. Like, it was crazy. If I put up pictures of how I looked in elementary school compared to how I looked in high school, I looked like a totally different person. You would not know that it was me unless I walked up to you and was like, "Hey, it's me, Mimosa." No one would have known that it was me. So I see her, and I'm just so happy to see her. Like, I can't wait till we finished our test or whatever, so that, because it was like a a placement test to see where you were, uh, you know, so that they could be able to place you in the correct classes. So if you didn't need to take any type of prerequisite type classes like basic English or basic math or whatever. So if you did a certain, it was almost like a SAT, but it was for college entry. So anyways, I couldn't wait till we finished the test so we could go on break so that I could be able to just tell her who I was. So we finished the test. We went on break, and with this particular program, like, they pretty much paid for everything. As long as you had a certain GPA, everything was taken care of. So after we took the test, the placement test, we all went into like this room to have lunch and hors d'oeuvres and drink. We're in high school, so it's not like liquor or nothing like that. But that I want to say they had like pizza, Subway, sandwiches, stuff like that. So everybody was just like going to the tables, getting their food, introducing each other to, introducing themselves to each other, because literally it was dozens of high schools in the city, and it was the top uh minorities. So it was Asians, it was Black people, it was Hispanic people. The ones with the best GPAs got into the program. So literally, it's like a melting pot of everything in this room, and we're all just getting to know each other. Oh, what school do you go to? Oh, what school do you go to? And we're just getting to know each other. But I'm beelining because I'm looking for Hot Pocket. So I see her, and I'm standing there, and I'm like, Hot Pocket. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, you don't know who I am, do you? And she's like, no. She was like, you don't go to such and such and such, do you? And I'm like, no. And she was like, do you go to such and such church? And I'm like, no. And she's like, well, how do I know you? And I was like, it's me, Mimosa. And then she just jumps up and she's screaming, and we're hugging each other, and we're so happy to see each other, and we're catching up. So at this point in time, at that time, because I was in the 11th grade and I was driving, I had a cell phone at that time. And at that time, you could be able to talk, but it had to be after 9 p.m. I'm telling my age, but that's okay because I don't look my age. So it had to be after 9 p.m. So I gave her my cell phone number. I was like, you can call me anytime as long as it's after 9 p.m. And so after that, we were literally inseparable. We talked to each other on the phone all the time after 9 p.m. And then on the weekends, we could talk for free. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Weekdays after 9, weekends free. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about in the chat if you a certain age. So we just became inseparable after that. Of course, we would on the weekends, we'll go to the movies together, we'll go to the mall together, we'll just do all kind of stuff together. And then we ended up finding out that she knew people that went to my school. I knew people that went to her school. So even after she graduated, she sat out a year because her mom was in the middle of getting another divorce. And her mom ended up remarrying again. Her mom is a whole story time on her own, and we will get into those things. It just won't be today. So she sat out a year. So while I was doing my senior year, she just was, at home taking care of her siblings, because at that time she had 3 siblings. It was a total of 4 of them. And yeah, she basically was at home. She wasn't even in school at the time. And I'm talking about, this girl was smart. I thought I was smart. This girl was smart. I'm talking about, she could write a 20-page paper like in an hour. The girl was so smart, so well versed, like intellect. The girl was just smart. And so my mom enjoyed, and my dad enjoyed, the fact that I was friends with someone who we could be able to challenge each other. Because, it took me more than 2 hours to write a 20-page paper. It took me like the whole day almost, And, she challenged me, and there were certain areas where I was better in certain subjects than she was. So I challenged her in certain areas, and we would study together. And my parents loved that. My parents loved that, and her parents loved that. So now I've graduated high school, and I have a decision to make. Am I going to stay home, because I did have a opportunity with the program that we were both in high school, you had an opportunity to do a feeder program. So basically they would pay, if you didn't finish all of your classes, because I was in high school, I was in so many different activities, you name it, I was in it. So I was only able to take maybe one or two classes a semester. So after I finished high school, I only had like 16 college credits. So I didn't have my associates at the time. I only had like 16 college credits after I finished high school. Well, actually, I had more than that because I took AP classes too. I think I had like 30. You know what? I had like 30 credits. I had 30 credits because I remember I only stayed home a year. I had 30 credits when I finished high school. That was with the program, and then that was also with my AP classes from school. So I finished high school with 30 college credits. So with the program, they were like, well, if you want to, we'll pay for you to get your associates. You know, but then my dream was to go to a particular school, and they had given me my acceptance letter. And so I had to make a decision. Am I going to go off to school by myself? Because our dream was for us to go to school together. Her mama wasn't having it. Her mama was newly married, and she wasn't taking care of them kids. She was gonna have Hot Pocket babysit them kids. So she had already said, Hot Pocket, you're not going anywhere. You're gonna stay here, finish, get your associates, and then maybe we'll rediscuss you going off, you know, to a university. So I was like, man, I don't want to go to school by myself. Um, our other two friends, one of them who actually ended up getting married to someone very famous, uh, she ended up going ahead and going to school, to the school that all of us wanted to go to. Uh, Hot Pocket ended up staying home. I ended up staying home. And then our other friend, she actually ended up finishing the program. So when she graduated, she already had her associates, honey. She was on it. She already had her associates. So she went to the university that was local because they were going to pay for it. Like I said, as long as you had the GPA and you were you had did all of the requirements, they were paying for you to go to school. So I discussed it with my parents. My parents were not ready for me to go off and be on my own, even though we had several cousins who were in the city. Uh, like I said, I had helicopter parents. And so I stayed home. She and I are going through scheduling. Okay, what classes you have to take? What class did you already talk to your advisor? So like at this point, we even scheduling our classes together because I have a car, I'm driving, and I want us to schedule our classes together because if I need to go by and pick you up, take you home, whatever, we need to have around the same schedule. Oh, hey, DJ, how are you? Thanks for stopping by. So, we get to the first day, and it is literally like a culture shock because it's one thing being in a program where you're doing night classes at a college, but it's totally different when you're there in the daytime and it's just people everywhere and you're learning the campus and you're meeting and you see all of these people and this, that, and the other. And it's just like a shock. So we're just like, oh my gosh, like what are we gonna do? So we learned about going to school together. We learned about going to college together. And that was that. So now we're at the college together and we're going to classes together. In the first semester, we both make straight A's, do exceptionally well. Second semester is here. The second semester is here, and same thing. So now we're going into, okay, so we went to summer school. So that was 12 credits. And then we went to uh the fall semester. We did 15 credits. And then there was the spring semester. So we're up into the third semester. So spring semester. Spring semester, I was gonna have my associates. I didn't even have to do a full year. I was gonna be out of there. And so I'm telling her, listen, we're going to such and such school like we planned. And she's like, yeah, we are. I'm gonna talk to my mom, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna talk to my dad, blah, blah, blah. You know. And so I'm like, we need to come up with ideas that's going to be really good resume builders. Because back then, I don't know if they do it now, because I don't, I can't even remember. Well, I know back then you had to have like letters of recommendation. Because I had to reapply to our favorite school all over again. So now I have to explain to them, in my letter, in my letter for reacceptance, why I declined the first time, and what was the significant reason why I declined them and decided to stay and get my associate's degree. So I'm like, I need to figure out some resume builders, honey. So I had already been doing student government association during the fall. To this day, still very good friends with the people that I met at SGA at that college. And I was very active. And then there was also like a sorority that it was my mom's sorority, but they also had like, like a feeder type program. And so we would do like etiquette classes and things like that. And Hot Pocket was doing all of this stuff with me, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be so good when we put in our application. We did this, we did that, we did the other. And then I was a pageant girl, and so every single pageant my mom was putting in an application, paying fees for, was doing the pageant thing. And then not only that, I was also a classically trained pianist also. So you name it, I was doing it, because they were going to accept me. There was no option. I was going to have the GPA, and I was going to have the accolades to go along with it. So I was never the boy crazy one, ever. Never. Out of all of my friends in the friends group, I just wasn't the boy crazy one. I was the one that was the prude and stuck on books. But when I got in SGA, there was this particular guy, and he was so smart. And he had this presence about him. And I was like, oh my God, he's so cute. And then not only that, he was a big, tall guy. Like, he was solid and he was tall. And when he walked into a room, he commanded presence. And I was like, oh, I have a crush on this guy. Like, oh. So what we're going to call him is Kryptonite. That's going to be his name. And I don't think we're ever going to mention Kryptonite again. So, this is going to be the final story with Kryptonite. So there was this guy, his name was Kryptonite, and he wasn't an officer in SGA. However, he was someone who was who was highly involved in the campus. And so at the time, the members of SGA that really had, had a liking to me and were drawn to me were like, listen, we want you to run for senator. We know that you plan on leaving in the fall. But we're going to go ahead and train you and gear you up. We want him out of the seat, not Kryptonite. It was someone else that had the seat of this particular senator position. They were like, we want them out of the seat, and we're going to put you in the seat. listen, we're going to help you with your campaign. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. So we had started the whole preliminary process of me running for SGA senator at the time. And so when the spring came up, that's when the elections were going to be. So I had not actually at that time put out my campaign yet, but certain people knew that I was running. And of course, my bestie, Hot Pocket, she knew that I was running for SGA senator at the time. So she had been helping me. We again, my mom was in a sorority, and she knew certain people within her organization, and they were business owners, and so I was able to get sponsorships so that I could be able to have like a good campaign running out, because the person whose seat I was trying to get, they were a heavy hitter. You know what I mean? Like, they were a heavy hitter, and I wasn't taking no for an answer because I needed that position on my application when I applied to my favorite school. So, kryptonite is coming around a lot. And I was like a really shy girl. I was afraid to really talk to guys. I knew how to talk to guys, but I just was like really nervous. So he started coming around more and more and more. And he was one of those people who were very pro-Black. And he would talk about different issues, and he just was a breath of fresh air. He reminded me a lot of my dad, like a whole lot of my dad. And so that's probably why I was, attracted to him. So, of course, I told my bestie, I was like, girl, I think I like him. I was like, I'm so nervous to talk to him, though. I want to give him my telephone number. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So she's like, girl, just talk to him. Because she was one of them girls. She was going to talk. Listen, she ain't had no issue talking, flirting with, getting to know. I was the one that was terrified. Like, literally would shake when the guy would come around. I was a nervous girl. And it was funny because you would think that we would have been polar. You would have thought that it would have been the total opposite. You would have thought that she would have been the one that was nervous, and I would have been the one that was just because of everything that I was involved in. I always had to be in front of someone or giving a speech, or because at the time I was a title holder, or giving a speech, or doing a recital, or whatever. Like, I was always in the public eye, So it was crazy that when it came to guys, I was nervous like that. I don't know why. I'm not like that now, of course, because I'm an adult. But back then, I was nervous, So we kept talking. And I was like, could you talk to him for me? And she was like, what? I was like, yeah, I want you to talk to him for me. Like, give him my number. I was like really, really anxious. So this was like on a Thursday. I was like, yeah, give him my number. And so Thursday comes and goes, and then Friday he comes into the SGA office. We're in there doing our homework, stuff like that. We're chatting it up, blah, blah, blah. And so as soon as he walks out, I nudge her and I'm like, did you get a chance to talk to him yet? And she was like, oh no, not yet, because she was on this thing called AIM. I wasn't on AIM yet, but she was on AIM, and they were friends on AIM. So whenever I would go over to her house after school, sometimes I would use her AIM, to talk to other people in school, or we would study together and stuff like that. But my mom and dad they were so finicky about the internet. They did not want me to use AIM at that point. They didn't have a problem with me, doing research and stuff on our computer at home, but they didn't want me to use AIM at that point because they were hearing all kind of crazy stuff stuff on the news and stuff like that. So we are now almost at the finish line. She tells me, I promise you, tonight I'm going to reach out to him on AIM and I'm going to talk to him. And I'm like, okay, cool. So that was Friday. Saturday, she and I had plans to go to the movies. And so I'm calling her and she's not answering the phone. And so I'm talking to her mom on the phone because my friend had her own telephone line. So I called her number. She's not answering. So I called the house phone. And so I'm talking to Hot Pocket's mom. And I'm like, hey, Mrs. Hot Pocket, is such and such home? And she's like, oh no, she's already gone out. Mimosa, I'll let her know that you called though. I'll let her know. She was like, she left for a while. So I was like, oh, okay, whatever. So Saturday goes, Sunday, child, I was in church all day long. By the time I got out of church, was too tired to talk to anybody. So Monday, I'm calling her, to let her know, hey, because at this point in time, her mom had gotten remarried again, and we literally can walk to each other's house. We live less than half a mile from each other. We literally live in the same neighborhood at this point. So I'm calling her to let her know, hey, I'm going to be to your house like in 3 minutes. So literally just go down like 2 stop signs and I'm to her house. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to be to your house in like 3 minutes. Be ready. And she was like, oh, okay. And see, what I loved about our parents would cook each of us breakfast. So like if she came over to my house, my dad would cook us breakfast because at that time my mom, she had like an earlier shift, so she would already be going. Or her mom would cook us breakfast or whatever. So I came in, got my breakfast sandwich, spoke to her mom. Her dad had already left for work at that time. Spoke with her mom, and we were off. So we're in the car and I'm talking to her and I'm like, oh, girl, I called you this weekend, blah, 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 blah. And she was like, oh yeah, my mom told me I was out. And I was like, out where? And she was like, oh girl, I was just out just running errands. And she mentioned her sibling's name. I thought it was weird because I knew for a fact that her siblings were with their dad that weekend, but I didn't press her on it. And I knew for a fact that because of the breakup was so bad with her siblings' dad and her mom, I knew that their dad wasn't going to have her over the house. I be piecing stuff together, I'm telling you. But I just was like, I said to myself, that don't make no sense. But I just let her keep telling me whatever story. And I was like, yeah, because we were supposed to go to movies. And, I really wanted to see such and such. And, girl, it's going to be a busy week. We're not going to be able to go, because I'm trying to plan out a whole futures. We going to such and such college. And we're going to do this. And we're going to do that. And you're going to be this. And I'm going to be that. That was back then. So we are in the car. And I'm like, did you talk to such and such and such? And she was like, yeah, we talked real briefly, but it was nothing real serious. But I did mention him to you, and let's just see what happens. And I was like, okay, let's see what happens. Okay, that's what I said to myself. So we in class, we go to school, we're in class. We're like on our 3rd class. And we're going to our final class, which would have been class number 4. And it was a computer science. No, that was African American history. It was an African American history class. Was it African American? No, that was at the other campus. I can't remember what class it was, but it was our final class at that particular campus. It was our last class of the day. And so I think it was that computer science class. It may have been. So we're walking across the campus and I see him. I see Kryptonite and he's walking towards us. And I'm just like, oh my God, that's him. Like I'm nudging her. I'm like, girl, that's him, that's him, that's him. And she's like, oh yeah, I see him. You know, she's still just walking with her head down or whatever. And we're walking together to class. And he's like, hey baby, how you doing? He's walking up to us and he's saying, hey baby, how you doing? I'm like, hey. And he's like, you don't need to be carrying that. Give me your bag. So I'm taking off my bag because we both had like these messenger bags. I had like this, my mom had bought us both these Coach messenger bags. That was the thing back then. And so we both had like these Coach messenger bags, and I'm taking off my messenger bag and I'm like passing it to him because he's like, I don't need to carry my bag, you know. You don't need to carry. He calling me back. He walking up calling me baby. He telling me he don't need to carry my bag. I'm like, okay, let me take off this bag, honey. Yeah. And then I see her taking off her bag too. And then he grabs her bag and he puts it around his shoulder, and my hand is still out. And then next thing I know, he goes in and he kisses her on the lips. And my hand is still out with my bag. And he was like, Mimosa, you all right? You okay? And I'm like, yeah, like, ooh. Yeah. I was like, I don't know what I was thinking. And I hurried up and put my bag back on. And so she's literally at this point frozen solid. He's like, okay, what class are y'all going to? And at this point, he takes her hand. He's kissed her. He's stood beside her, has her messenger bag across his shoulder, and he takes her hand and he's walking with us. And I'm like, I need to go ahead and catch up with y'all later. I was like, I need to speak to the professor about something before class starts. And I take off running. I take off running and I go to the nearest bathroom that I can find, and I am bawling, crying. I mean, I am crying. I am crying. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, what happened? Like, and I think I really was crying because I was embarrassed because I was still behind sitting up here holding out a messenger bag for him to grab, and he's not grabbing it. So I am bawling, and I'm just like, no, you're going to be the SGA senator. You have to dry your eyes. People can't see you like this. So I'm trying to fix my face, Then the thing to wear was Iman Earth 4 pressed powder, but it had like these like little like little flakes, like little gold dust flakes in them. And so I'm literally having my brush with my Iman palette, my little Iman compact, and I was just tapping underneath my eye. Then I took my little Clear Mac lip gloss, put it on. I'm freshening up myself, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. So I decide to stop at one of the machines to get some water. And so I stop at the machine to get the water. And then when I walk into class, she's not even sitting in our seats. She's sitting at the far right end of the classroom. And I'm like, girl, our seats are right smack dead in the middle right here. So we can see everything. Like, that's what we doing now? So I'm just like, oh, okay, not a problem. She's sitting over there. I sit in the seat that we usually sit in, and we have class. I can't even tell you what that class was about. I couldn't even focus on what that class was about. I have no idea what that class was about. Because all I could think in my head was, why in the world would Hot Pocket do some trifling stuff like that? She know that Kryptonite was supposed to be my man. Like, what is you doing? Like, really? You're supposed to be my friend. I'm literally having a conversation in my head the entire time class is going on. I have no idea what happened in that particular class because I was completely thrown off. Completely thrown off. So, after class, everyone is, the professor has dismissed class. I'm getting my things together and I'm noticing that Hot Pocket is still sitting in her chair. She's taking a very, very long time to gather her items. I said, oh, I got something to fix this up for. I said, okay. So I get all of my items and I'm walking outside like I was leaving. So I walked outside the door. I actually stood because how the classrooms were, let's say that the door was here, but the entryway to the door was like way out here. So it was like maybe like 6 feet of wall. So you couldn't see if a person was on the other side of that wall. And this is how all the classrooms were set up. So the other classroom had already been dismissed that was right next door to our classroom. So I literally was standing right there in that area waiting for Hot Pocket to bring her Hot Pocket self. Now y'all see why she had a nickname Hot Pocket. And there's several stories like this. So just get ready to tune in, okay? So she, I kind of could tell that it probably was her because of, the class. I had been trying to wait for her to leave the classroom, but it was taking her so long to leave the classroom. So I went into the little entryway of the other class and I was waiting for her to walk by. Sure was. You gonna answer these questions for me today, ma'am? Yes, ma'am. I ain't want to have this conversation in front of Kryptonite, but we gonna have the conversation. We're going to have the conversation. So I was waiting, and then I see her walk by, and I said, "Hey, Hot Pocket." She was like, hey, Mimosa, what was that about? Like, what's going on? I need you to explain to me." And she just looking down, just looking down, looking down. Hell, I'm like, hello. We're supposed to be best friends, and I'm literally having a conversation. I don't care who walking by. I don't care because we go get it straight and where it happened. We go correct it. Okay. And I'm like, what happened? Did you even talk to him? She was like, yeah, I mentioned you, but he told me that you weren't his type. And he told me that he really liked me, and we ended up finding out that we had a lot in common. And so we just really just talked like the whole weekend. We talked, and he ended up coming over for Sunday dinner. And so we just got to know each other more and more. And I didn't know how to tell you. So me being the understanding friend that I am, I said, well, I just wish that you would have been open and honest with me. You knew I had called you over the weekend. You knew I had reached out to you. You had several opportunities to tell me the truth. And I said, this really does hurt my feelings. But if he's not attracted to me and he don't like me, I can't make no man like me. Like, I ain't that girl. I mean, hey, he likes you. He's more attracted to you. That's cool. I was like, not a problem. I said, I wish you both the best. We still gonna be friends, right? And I said it just like that. And she was like, oh yeah, of course. You're my best friend. You're my best friend. Like, I just hate that this even happened. And then she goes, uh, I just don't even know how this even happened. Like, I probably should break up with him, huh? And I said, no, if you like him and y'all have so much in common, stay with the man. I was like, okay, come on, let's go. I was like, let's go to such and such and such and get something to eat, and then I'll take you home. And she goes, oh, well, I was going to use his phone to call you to ask you if there was any way that you could just wait a couple of hours and then go by my house around this time so that because this was her stepdad. So that my stepdad will think that you dropped me off, but I really want to hang out with Kryptonite. I really want to go to lunch with him and go get something to eat with him and hang out with him for a few hours. So you know what? My silly self went out to eat by myself, waited around until I got the phone call to pretend to drop her off at home. I know. Dumb. Yes, Jacob, you can ask me something. Yes, Jacob, you can ask me something. So dumb. So dumb. But let me tell you, okay, I don't know what this is about. Okay, so dumb. And they stayed together for a few months. They weren't together that long after that. Maybe like 2 or 3 months they dated. But let me tell you what's so funny. A few years ago, I was back home and I was actually taking my mom to the doctor. And we were running errands. And we were at Sam's Club of all places. This is so funny because I always run into people at Sam's Club, at this particular Sam's Club on this particular side of town. And so years later, I ran into him. And so we follow each other on socials. So I knew that he was married. I knew he had kids. I knew, he have a whole nother life. And even though we followed each other on socials, we never were like very close friends. I never had his telephone number. We never had a private conversation outside of the comments. The only conversation we ever had was like, oh, hey, happy birthday in the comment section. Okay, I don't want to remove you, Jacob. If you have any questions, just email me. My email is in my info section. Okay. So, and I'm sorry about that. I don't know who this person is, but they keep asking questions on the channel. Okay. So, anyways, we run into each other at Sam's Club and I see him and we're talking. And I don't know what made me do it because at this time, this was many years later, she and I are no longer friends. She and I don't even communicate with each other. And I'm going to tell you what led up to us never speaking again because it's going to take 7 parts because it's just that serious. So I don't know what made me bring it up. And I said to him, I said, Kryptonite. I said, come here. I want to talk to you about something. And he goes, what's going on? And at that time, my mom, she was out shopping in the store or whatever. He just so happened to be there, shopping or whatever. And I said, how Pocket ever tell you that I had a crush on you?" And he was like, "You had a crush on me?" I was like, "Yes, I had the biggest crush on you in college. At such and such and such." I'm just naming the stuff and I'm just telling him, how we would have the conversations and we come in the SGA and to the office and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, "I had the biggest crush on you too." And I'm just like, and he was like, "Yeah." He was like, "I had a crush on you too." He was like, "I had even told Hot Pocket that I had a crush on you. But she told me that you had a boyfriend and that you were dating someone." And I looked at him like, "You have got to be joking." This girl had made up this whole elaborate story to this man, telling this man, "I had a boyfriend. I was dating someone else. I was practically engaged to some imaginary guy, and that I wouldn't be interested in him." And so I told him, I said, "She told me that I wasn't your type." And he was like, "What?" I said, "Yes, she told me that I wasn't your type." Now, mind you, the only difference between Hot Pocket and I were, well, there was a big difference. We were, attractive. She was attractive. The difference was she was shorter than I was, and I was a very tall, like I'm 5'10". And at that time, I was smaller than what I was now. So I was like, if you're in pageants or the modeling, you already know I had a certain physique. And so she was a whole lot more curvier than I was because she was a thick girl. She was a really thick girl, but she was shorter. So she had the hips and the butt and the chest. I didn't have all of that. But for me to be as tall as I was, I had more of an hourglass shape. I was very curvy as well, but I was curvy on a tall end and she was curvy on a short end. So I just assumed that, okay, well, when she said that I wasn't his type, maybe he liked shorter girls. Mind you, this guy's like 6'4", 6'3", 6'4". He's a tall guy. So whatever. So, I didn't take it personally. So we literally are here in the middle of Sam's Club exchanging stories of what this girl told him and what he told me. And he said, "You know what? That's the reason why we ended up breaking up." Because he said she just would lie about the silliest stuff. And he was like, "I couldn't keep up with her lies." He was like, one particular day, we were supposed to go out to dinner. We were supposed to go out on a date. And she flaked on me. And he was like, and I had been calling her house. She wasn't answering the phone. He was like, I had even called the house phone. Her mom answered and said that she was doing something with her siblings. So he was saying that how he had gone to the house. Long story short, he ended up catching her with another guy. That's a whole nother story. But when they broke up, I never knew why they broke up. Me being her friend, she never told me why they broke up. I just knew that he would just look at us with disdain whenever he would see us in campus, like a few months after, like they were lovey-dovey, holding hands, this, that, and the other. And then, a few months later, he wouldn't even speak to us. He didn't speak to her, and he didn't speak to me because I guess I was guilty by association. Years later, when I tell you years later, I just so happen to run into this man, and he tells me the complete truth about everything. And this is the story, the introduction to Hot Pocket. And you think that that's crazy? And see, this is the thing. That should have been a warning to cut ties. But me being the person that I am, I always want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I always feel like I want to give people second chances and third chances and fourth chances. Well, I gave that help about 6, 7, 8 chances. And when I tell you all of the different situations, and it seemed like every single situation just got crazier and crazier and crazier and crazier. And by the time that we on part 7, you all are going to be gasping for air. So that is the story of Hot Pocket. This is her introduction. I'll be doing part 2 very soon. And so, yeah. Thank you all so much for watching. I know that this is a video that you guys had been anticipating. I had been letting you all know that it was coming. So, yeah. All right. Thanks so much for joining in. Talk to you all soon.